Greetings, Tony Mobley here, and we're back. Yes, we're back with a new episode of Conversations with Tony Mobley. And today we are having a conversation with Mr. John Pretto. That's right, Mr. John Pretto, a business owner and video production producer, and now creator of Space Vegas. And this is episode 38 of Conversations with Tony Mobley. Why are we here? We are here because life has provided me the opportunity to have real conversations with real people. First, I want to thank my guest, educator, Miss Sarah Deering, for our conversation on last week. And if you missed that conversation, I encourage you to go back and watch that conversation. I want to thank the team behind Conversations with Tony Mobley. We hope to help others with these conversations, but I need your help. Please go to our website, conversationwithTonyMobley.com, and register for our Mukana chat. That's right, Mukana chat. There you can write your questions in, type your questions in, and you can vote those questions up and down. That's right. And also you can participate in the chat on YouTube. So if you like this and past conversations, we ask that you like and subscribe. And we are ready to get going. Set that bell to all notifications and be reminded of upcoming conversations. And so our very first question is going to be, who is John Pretto?
Well, thank you, Tony. Is it my turn to talk now? Great new glasses, by the way. I really like the new look of the rims of the glasses.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
More than the old ones. I am a polymath autodidact, but I did go to college. I've had to reinvent myself. Born and raised in Las Vegas.
Wait a minute. Now you have to explain all of what you just said, because it went over my head.
I was going all the way back to the beginning. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and I have 4 siblings. We grew up in the desert, and we used to do rockets when I was a little kid. But I have my father was a chief of radiology here at the large hospital, Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas. And my mother was an RN. She was a nurse, and we grew up in a very loving household, and all of my siblings and parents both very well educated and had a lot to live up to in my family. My older siblings all very, very intelligent and very well educated. And my brother, right above me, Robert, is one of those Mensa guys who's valedictorian out of every school that he went to, and genius level guy. He's a medical doctor, radiologist. And I went to engineering school. So my eldest brother is an attorney. My sister has a master's degree in public health, and my brother above me, Robert, is a radiologist. And I am an engineer. So I went to college and got an engineering degree and then got a business degree on top of that. So I have 2 bachelor's degrees, and then came back to Las Vegas and started a computer consulting company. This is 1990 when I started a computer company called Computer Network Consultants, 1990. In Las Vegas, I was the 3rd certified Novell engineer in Las Vegas, and I did lots of local area networks using Novell as the server platform, and did tons and tons of those. And so I've got lots of experience in local area networking, and then I partnered up with a programmer who wrote accounting software, and I would go in and set up the network, and then he would put his software on top of that, and we sold lots of those systems. So I'm an engineer and technologist by passion and education, but also have a lot of business experience. Having those 2 degrees, if anybody has entrepreneurial aspirations, I suggest they go and take at least the accounting classes so that they can learn how to read a balance sheet, a P&L statement, and a statement of cash flows. That will help them later in their life as they transverse entrepreneurialism. So
I
an
got a
autodidact.
question for you.
Oh
I
yeah,
got
go
a
ahead.
question for you. So my question for you is, did you get both degrees from the same school?
I did, yes. I graduated from DeVry in Phoenix, and they have an engineering program. When I was about 3/4 done with my engineering program, I started the business class, and all the undergrad, all the what do they call the first 2 years of college? The general classes transferred over, and so I got a running head start in that regard. So a lot of my early classes transferred over, and then it took me 1 year extra. So five total years, 2 bachelor's degrees, and
Fantastic.
in addition some MBA classes. So I got a third of the way done with my MBA, and I was tired of being a poor broke college student, so I left and came back to Las Vegas in 1990, and created. I knew I wanted to have my own company while I was in school, so I got the business degree and the technology degree, and knew I wanted to go into some sort of technical business. And I've been working on computers since the Commodore PET. So the first computers that we learned on formally in school, which would have been in the late 70s, was a Commodore PET. And then we had an Atari 800 at our house when I was probably 12, 13, whenever year that came out. And so I had the opportunity to learn BASIC and games on that machine. So I kind of lived through the microcomputer revolution, and as historian in that regard. In fact, I've got a computer kind of museum. I've got a lot of old machines that I kept around as museum pieces. And I have every version of DOS except for 1.0. I have 1.0 on floppy disk, but I don't have 1.0. It's really hard to find. And so
Wow.
I'm really into old history of microcomputing, and learned a lot in not only installing but the low level assembly level programming and wiring up the hardware. I've got an old Z80 microcomputer sitting on the shelf over here that I wire wrapped myself. And so I've got low level computer knowledge on the hardware side. And then we had to write the assembly code. Modern languages are hard for me to keep track of.
John, I'm going to stop you again. So you are sharing all of this wealth of information. You have all of this equipment. Are you making it available on video, or how are you? You have this museum already in place. How are you? Are you going to share it? What's your plan for allowing others to experience this history that you have?
Wow, I never even thought about it. I thought one day I'd have a special room in my house that I could set up all my museum pieces, but now my wife would never let me do that. I don't have enough room to pull that off. I've got, I don't know, maybe 15 older machines. I've got the original IBM PC. I've got an old original Mac. I've got, a bunch of older machines laying around, and then some older interesting software, version 1.0 Windows, etc. But I haven't gone that far, Tone. I guess maybe when I retire, I'll think about something philanthropic in that regard.
Well, I think that it is something that you should definitely consider, because there's a lot of history that people will not be able to connect with right now. The younger people will not be able to connect with the history that you have at your disposal. And so it would be a great experience, I think, for them to be able to see where all of this great technology that they're currently using now came from.
Yeah, and there's a ton of that stuff on YouTube, but I was the neighborhood dad. And so when my son was a little guy, probably 10, in between 8 to 15, all the kids used to come hang out at our house because I was the fun dad, and I had dirt bikes and a big monster truck, and we used to go out in the desert and fly rockets and ride motorcycles and stuff. And I taught all those kids computers. And so I have spread the knowledge to the younger generation. And all these kids now are in their 30s with their own families. And I've got huge respect for these kids. They all did very, very well in life. And I at least 5 to 7 kids every weekend at my house, staying over, sleeping on the floor, playing computer games all night long. And then I'd wake them up at 7 in the morning and load them in the truck to go out riding motorcycles and do rockets. We had a lot of fun with the kids, and they respect me. I taught them, good morals and righteous, living. And so a lot of them came from broken homes. And so I had to fill in to be their father. So I have good memories of raising all those boys.
That's fantastic. We're going to talk about your parents now. So
Great.
what lessons have you learned from your parents that you're currently using today?
A ton. And so, a lot of people say my father taught me. My mom taught me because she was home. My dad was always gone. My mom was, and still alive. She's 85 now, and she lives in San Diego. She was always into the positive thinking and self-improvement. And so that was infectious for me as a child growing up, to always be positive and always look at the good things. She was very philanthropic. She did Boys Club and, Red Cross and all that kind of stuff. And so I got a very positive outlook in life. And that, I guess, manifests itself in me today, where we live a very optimistic and positive life. And my father was adventurous type. So he was a medical doctor, but he liked to build Baja bugs. He was a certified welder. He was a commercially rated airplane pilot.
Wow.
He was an amazing guy. And so every weekend I would go flying in his little planes. And so we flew around the southern United States. And then we got introduced to, a lot of the stuff that my dad used to do. And he used to schlep me. I was thinking about this the other day. He used to schlep me around because he used to read the x-rays at several of the rural clinics around Las Vegas at the time. And he would take me, and then we'd go, and he would read the x-ray, and he'd have a stack of x-rays sitting on the counter, probably 30 or so. And I was, 8 or 9, walking around cold, dark, smelly hospitals. That's why I'm not a doctor today. And watch him read these x-rays. Watching a radiologist read and dictate the findings of an x-ray, if you haven't done that, is an amazing art. To watch them articulate and diagnose these x-rays is pretty phenomenal. And so I used to be amazed by my father because you couldn't understand anything he was saying.
Wow.
And then 40 years later, he used to come in my room when I was talking to my friends about technology and have the same experience. It was great.
That's fantastic. We have a question from Josh Kaufman. He says, John, can you locally record for the documentary?
Negative, I can't. We'll be able to grab the video off of YouTube, Josh. Thanks for asking. Josh is one of our producers, which I'm sure we'll get into in a few minutes here.
And we have another question from Josh Kaufman from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What is the source of your interest in rockets? If it was the Apollo program, what are your memories from that era?
Great question, Josh. So I can't remember how, it was 69, right? So I was 6 years old. We were in Joliet, Ottawa, Illinois. And at my aunt and uncle's house, when we saw Armstrong step onto the moon. And that was a magical moment. My dad's a technology lover. And so he was totally into rocketry. We had all the mission patches. We had little jackets with all the mission patches on it. And then my dad's the one that introduced us to the Estes rocket. And in the summertime, we used to go out and do the little rockets. I was probably 5 years old. And there's a picture of me somewhere on the web of me as a little guy watching a rocket go off.
Wow.
And that was our introduction. So my 3 brothers and I all built rockets ourselves. And then we would go out on the weekends and we'd launch them off. And we had a ball. And that was my introduction. And I try to share that with the little guys today. We get the scouts out at our rocket shoots, and I have a little tear in my eye because all these little kids that get to experience, and they're so excited to watch these things go off, And that was me 50 years ago.
Wow. We have another question, and the question is, can you talk about how you got started in streaming?
Okay, so I'm one of the grandfathers of the streaming media business, and when I was in college, I knew that video across a network was going to happen. And so this is when there was very few networks, microcomputer networks out there, and not a lot of people actually had a computer in their home, irregardless of having a local area network. But I knew that one day you'll be able to watch live video on your computer. Okay, so this is a great story. My father, in radiology, in 1988, we got a grant from the state of Nevada to do teleradiology systems for, I don't know, it was like 14 or 18 rural clinics because they can't afford to have a radiologist on staff. And so the state had a grant to buy a computer, a light box to put the x-ray on top of, a little arm to hold a camera up, and then that system allowed the technicians to take the x-rays, scan them individually, and send them across a 28.8 modem in 1988 for my dad to read at his house. And so that methodology of data acquisition, data compression, and then data transmission, and then uncompression is exactly what you're seeing on this stream today. The methodology is identical. And so when I got out of college in 1990, and 1993, 94, we wrote a one-way streamer that was 120 by 96, no audio, and it was about one frame every 3 seconds. So it was like this. And that was 1996. We incorporated a company called Hello Network Inc. And then we were Wall Street Finance. We raised $80 million for that company in 96 and rode the internet wave up and did tons of live streaming. I did the PGA, the LPGA, the DNC convention, Kelsey Grammer, Joe Walsh. My wife makes fun of me when I go on my little soapbox, and produced those events in the 90s using our own technology, our own compression algorithm. It did use TCP/IP. We used TCP/IP as a protocol. We didn't use UDP back then. Everything was transmitted using TCP. And Hello Network was supposed to go public in March of 2001, and that's when the market crashed. And later that year was 9/11, and all corporate expenditures ceased. We were a .com that actually had revenue, but after 9/11, that was a 1-2 punch for Hello Network, and that killed off that company. Otherwise, when we went public, I wouldn't be here today, Tom. I'd be on a island somewhere. Really.
I understand that. It's amazing though that when you first started talking about how you were able to put the pieces together, that all of this was going to happen. And so thank you for being the grandfather of streaming. That's very cool. We have another question from Mr. Josh Kaufman. He says, John, how did you become involved in office hours? What keeps you active, involved in the community?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I was sitting at home. We had guests at our house that kind of got stuck here in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm on the computer at least 8 to 12 hours every day, and I followed Alex Lindsay from MacBreak Weekly and Twit. I've been watching Leo for, it's got to be longer than 20 years now. And I've been a MacBreak Weekly fan for many, many years. In fact, watched the first couple of episodes of Alex with the old F950 camera that he bought from Lucas, which I think he paid like $60,000 or $80,000 for. And he tweeted out on March 24th and said, "Hey, I'm going to pop on Zoom and just talk about media." And so I popped on that first day, and then it just kind of clicked because these were my people. And everything related to media, audio, video, streaming has been my career. So 2022 is 26 years for me in the streaming media business. Been doing it for a long time. So it helped me get through the pandemic. Why do I stay? Because I believe office hours community is really going to be a breakthrough new method for media distribution and for vendor, what's the right verb I'm looking for vendors to communicate to prospects and customers. I really think Alex has got something here, and I'm a huge believer in the future of office hours. And I do a lot of work behind the scenes, cataloging the data related to office hours. I have a big database of what's going on because I believe it's going to turn into something valuable for people that stick around. That's why I stick around, Josh. So that's how I found it, and that's why I stick around.
It's an amazing story, John, and mine is very similar in terms of following Alex from, years going by, and all, I was watching Leo be called to help, and I have the same sort of. I remember watching Alex when he was using Meerkat and was broadcasting from Africa, and was, he had started the school, and they were doing some, and he was traveling different places and sharing that. It was really great, and so I sort of. We'll talk about it a little bit later about, the journey that I was on when I sort of came into the whole office hour experience. But, it's a similar story. So the next question, I guess, is going to be sort of a special, another reunion for us. And that, can you talk about Blab? Please share how you are still connected to that community.
Great. So most people don't know, Tony and I have known each other for many, many years. We met on another video social community called Blab. Blab was interesting because it was one of the very first video social networks, streaming social networks. And it began in 2014. And it was a hackathon project from the guys that started Bebo. And Bebo was the third largest social network that was sold to AOL for $700 million back in the day. Michael Birch and his wife were the founders of that company. They had this hackathon, and then they promoted it on Periscope. So I found Blab on Periscope. Somebody put a link to Blab on Periscope. I logged into a room and I saw 4 people talking with the chat room, and I'm like, "Hey, I know this technology." They were using WebRTC, which is prevalent today, which I think what we're using right now for me to call into, same technology. It's been around for a long time. Yes,
that's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
So Blab was social streaming, and even to this day, I haven't seen those features matched in a network, a social network that's out there today, because they did a lot of things right with that, but they couldn't figure out a way to monetize it. And then they finally shut it down after 2 years. And so the great thing about Blab was they had a Who's On Now page, and you could see all the people that were broadcasting and the topic that they were talking about. So you'd scroll up and down a list of rooms that were open, and you could see, oh, they're talking about streaming. Oh, they're talking about, we had a lot of marketers in there talking about how to make money on the internet, how to, make your LinkedIn page better, all that kind of stuff. We made fun of a lot of those people, Tony and I. But the cool people hung out towards the bottom of the list. And we used to talk about broadcasting and, fun topics, cigars, playing poker, what do you do in Las Vegas? And what I tell people about Blab, I met more interesting people on Blab that I had in my real life in the past 10 years. And so the ability to meet a worldwide audience from the comfort of your home and build a long-lasting relationship with those people that I have today, and financially rewarding as well. I've done business with a lot of these people that I still stay in touch with today. Blab's died in 2016. It's been dead almost now 7 years. And a lot of those people that Tony knows as well, I talk to on a daily basis and are part of a rocket team. And a lot of them you guys will recognize in the office hour community. So Paul Wallace, Tony Mobley, John Pretto, Leland Best, Colin was on Blab, a few others, J.S. Gilbert. There's, I don't know, probably 10 of us that all stayed in touch and then communicated. Then we went to a couple other social communities that tried to copy Blab. And Blab, let me just articulate a few things that I think that Blab did right. When you were in a room, it was a quad, so they had two on top of two. You could mouse over somebody's name and you could read a little blurb where they were from, what their handle in Twitter was. But then you could click on their name and it would take you to their profile page. And you could get more information about that person. That was hugely useful when...
Absolutely it was.
Yeah, navigating with them.
And I want to make one slight correction to what you said, John. It was Meerkat.
Oh, it might have been Meerkat.
Meerkat was the one that pushed all of us to Blab, and then Periscope came after. Yeah. And one of the amazing things about Blab is that I think that we are beginning to see the kind of conversation, the kind of interaction in office hours, after hours now is sort of bringing back some of those old juices that I remember experiencing in Blab. And it's amazing to be on, this journey and have this opportunity to experience this. And I've thanked you several times for being on tonight, but I want to thank you again because, when we got a chance to get together on office hours, it just rekindled all of those great feelings that we had, because that was one of the best communities that I have ever been a part of in my life. And they really, nobody was a stranger. You always felt welcome. And after hours and office hours is doing the same thing, in that you are welcome, and it's good to be a part of the community. And Josh Kaufman is back again with another question. He said, Josh is our ringer for tonight. He's going to be putting in all these questions. And while before I read Josh's question, I know that the office hours community is watching this conversation tonight. And I want to say, don't work poor Josh to death tonight. You guys ask some questions of John. Ask those questions of John that you want to know about. Come on now. Ask. Don't let Josh be the only one asking questions tonight. Thanks, guys. All right, Josh's question is, how would you compare learning about technology in its more nascent stages in your youth to young people learning the same disciplines today?
That's like an impossible question to... how long did you take to write that question, Josh? You know what? What I do is I introduce young folks to many, many things, and I try to find out what they're passionate about. My son is a passionate gamer. He'll game 14 hours in a row. That's what he was passionate about. He didn't want to learn software development, which is what I recommend all young guys to do today, because it's an amazing career right now. But you have to spend time with the individual and find out what they're passionate about, and then you have to feed those passions. That's how it works. So I didn't force anything on these young boys. I kind of saw what they were they were attracted to, and found out if they had any talent, and I would push them in that direction. That's kind of how I mentored these young guys.
Okay, we have another question, and this question is, when did you launch your first rocket?
I'm going to tell you two funny stories. Built with my father, all my brothers and I on the kitchen counter, building rockets, glue everywhere. My mom yelling at us because there's sandpaper and balsa wood broken everywhere, and we made a mess in the kitchen. And I was probably 5 years old, and to see my first rocket go off that I built, well, helped with my father, you're 5 or 6 years old, was here in Las Vegas in the middle of the desert on probably an A motor, and it was the most exciting thing ever in my life at that moment, and I was hooked. But then my dad took my rocket that I built with his help on the 4th of July, and he poured gasoline on it and inside it and lit it off, and it didn't blow up, but it burned up in the sky. And I cried,
wow.
Ran off into my room and cried. He bought me another one the next day. But that was extremely traumatic that I remember 50 years later.
Wow. Can you talk about the amazing infrastructure for the Vegas rocket project?
Oh, you want to start that now? So my hobby, which is rocketry, is very cyclic. And I have found that you get real excited and you build a lot of rockets and shoot off rockets. Then you kind of get bored and don't do it anymore, and you put it on the shelf for many, many years. And that's what happened with me in rocketry. So we had an amazing time when I was a young kid until probably I was a teenager, and then I found that BMX and females were more attractive than rockets at that time, and so so then I got caught up in school, and then I went to high school, and then I went to college. When I was in college, I was in a hobby store. I'm walking down the aisle, and I stop at the rocket section, and I was probably 21 years old, and down in Phoenix. And I saw a motor that I've never seen before as far as size goes. It was the biggest motor I've ever seen. It was a G-class motor. Rocket motors you can buy at Walmart. I think Target has them, Walmart online, of course, and all the hobby stores. And if you see the little motors, they're black powder. They're classified in alphanumeric designations. So an A motor is the smallest one. You can actually buy half A's, but they're hard to find. So you have an A motor, and then B is twice the power of an A. So every alphanumeric designation is double the power, right?
Okay.
And so the biggest ones we could buy when we were kids were a D motor. And so when I was walking down this hallway, I saw a G motor. So D, E, F, G. So 8 times more powerful than a D motor. And I was like, oh my God, when did they come out with these? Well, then I had to buy a rocket. I bought one mail order from a magazine. They had a high-powered rocket magazine there. And I bought one of those, and I bought my first rocket that I still have, high-powered rocket, in my garage. I still have the same rocket. And I flew that off when I was 21 years old in Phoenix and got my level 1 certification. And flew rockets for several years. And then when I graduated college, I put it on the shelf again for probably 15 years. And then started again in probably my 30s, and then got re-involved in it. And then in Tripoli, which is the National Organization for High-Powered Rockets, has a classification. It's kind of like belt system in karate. Level 1, level 2, level 3. And so when I bought that first rocket in Phoenix, I got my level 1 certification in 1986, and I was number 00573 in all of Tripoli, which means I was the 573rd member that signed up for Tripoli National. Now they have over 22,000 members. And so when people see my number, they get all excited because I have an extremely low number in the national organization. I have the lowest number in all of Nevada.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't do rockets again. And then about, I don't know, 10 years ago, we got heavy into rocketry. My brother and I did my level 3 rocket, which was called VidRock. And if you go to vidroc.com, you'll see the first project that I built in 2001, March of 2001. So 21 years ago today, I launched the very first live stream from an amateur rocket.
Oh, my goodness.
Called VidRock. If you go there, you can watch the video. And that was a milestone in rocketry. It was my level 3 project. And then I built the antenna that transmitted down from the rocket, and then using Wi-Fi, a 9-mile shoot to my father's house where we had a cable modem, and broadcast that live on the internet in 2001 using our own streaming technology. So that was the entrance back into high-powered rocketry. And then a couple years after that, I stopped doing it again. And then about 3 years ago, we started up again. And if you don't pay your national dues, now they just changed the rules. They give you 5 years absence. But back then in 2008, I didn't pay my national dues, and they strip you of your certifications. And so to fly again, I had to recertify. So last March, I certified level 1 and level 2 the same day. Level 2, you have to take a written exam and fly a more powerful motor. And then this project is my recertification for level 3. And I was telling some of the guys in office hours, Chris Fenwick, Keenan, that I was going to launch this rocket up. And they said, we ought to stream that rocket. And I said, fine, I'll be happy to do that. And it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed into this giant production now.
Absolutely. It is a giant production. It is big time. It is being shared throughout the streaming platforms, and a lot of people are talking about it. They're talking about it in education. They're talking about it with science, and it is a big deal. And I'm happy to share with those who might be watching that I have my patches.
You have 2, right, Tom?
I have 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put them in the same wrapper to protect them, and I'm going to quickly show them off. So this one, can you guys see that? That is so cool. And here's the other one.
So one's PVC. That one is PVC. It's plastic PVC, and it's got Velcro. Does that have Velcro on the back?
Yes, it does.
So that's meant for, like service guys or security guys, whatever. Always have those jackets that have Velcro on them, because they're always changing patches in and out. And so there's the embroidered one that you held up first, which is this guy, and then the PVC patches. 2 different kind of applications. And I bought 100 patches, and I think I have 15 left because I gave a lot away to people on office hours. And we have a form up. I'll probably buy more, but if you're interested in getting a patch, you can hit me up on the Discord, and there's a form to fill out on our website. I'll send you a link to that form. You fill that out, and I'll throw one. As long as supply lasts, I'll send you a little embroidered patch, because we're out of the PVC ones now.
John,
so that's a collector's item, Tone, that one.
John, we're running out of time, so we're going to have to speed up a little bit.
Oh, brother.
So we're going to do, I guess, rapid fire going forward from now on. And so we have a question from Guy Cochran from Seattle. What has been the best domain name that you have acquired? I know that one.
I used to buy and sell domains, but I have one gem. I own several. I just got an offer on my own name. My own name's 25 years old, Pretto.com. But I am the owner of Christian.com. I've owned that for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. And that's my pride and joy is Christian.com, that domain I own.
Very cool. What does your family think about what you're doing?
Which part? My family all gets along really well. And so all the siblings, my mom is still alive. My mom lives with my brother, my little brother, and we all get along fabulously. We all Zoom during the pandemic, during lockdown, once a week. It was nice to see all the family. And they're super supportive of everything. My elder brother, Chuck, the attorney, is also into rocketry, and he's trying to make it out for the launch, but he's also Rotarian. And so he's got a big Rotary event that same weekend, but he's going to try to pop on over to Vegas. So they're super, super supportive.
Yeah, my family, we're doing the same thing. We've been meeting every Sunday at 7 p.m. since the pandemic too. So we're staying connected, and we've decided that we're going to continue to do it no matter what. Other than when we actually physically are together with one another.
Smart, it's a good idea.
Yeah, how has the world changed since COVID-19?
My grandpa was lived through the Depression, and he stereotypically for that generation kept his savings underneath his mattress because he didn't trust banks, because he lost a lot of money in the banks shutting down. And so he was part of that generation that had that paradigm and trust factor and anguish of poverty, et cetera, burn into his paradigm, into his head. And so now I think that this generation that has lived through this pandemic is going to have that paradigm burnt into their head about pandemics and being careful and washing hands and being, and understanding what a pandemic is and how it affects society overnight, where you go from a thriving community to being locked up in your house. I think that it's got a significant paradigm in this generation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm still seeing a lot of different behaviors that we are acting, sort of almost acting out as if there's no way that we're going to actually be locked up again, in our homes.
Bill Gates says there's more coming.
I would not be surprised at that.
Yeah.
Please, this is a conversation for both of us to kind of talk about, but please share your thoughts about being a survivor.
Oh, great. I was looking forward to this portion of the conversation, Tony. A lot of people don't know that Tony and I are both prostate cancer survivors. And it's funny because I get a lot of people say, hey, can you talk to my dad? Can you talk to my uncle? Can you talk to my brother? Can you talk to my cousin? Because Tony and I have lived through this. And I was in great shape in my 40s and 50s. I was running 5Ks and 10Ks. Every month they have one of those, charity runs. I did every one of those things. And in the middle of my run, I had a real eager pressure to go to the bathroom, and ran into the bathroom and could barely go. And I called my brother, the doctor, and he said, go see our friend, a guy that he went to medical school with. And our dads were both partners. His dad was a general practitioner, and I actually used to go to him as a kid. So we grew up together, and he was a urologist. I went to see him, and the whole time he's examining me, he's talking to me, he's asking me questions about my brothers and my dad. How's your dad doing? And as soon as he did the digit exam, he stopped talking, and he knew immediately that there was a problem. I came back the following week to get a biopsy, which is not a fun procedure, as Tony knows. It was one of the worst.
Absolutely, I know about it. It's an awful experience.
They don't tell you anything. They don't give you
No,
anything. You jump on this table, and they do their business, and it's not a fun test. And they pull
absolutely not.
tissues out of your body to send for the biopsy. And a week later, it came back positive. And then the worst part about it is you have to wait because they immediately send you for a bone scan to see if the cancer has traveled throughout your body. And so the 3 days in between waiting to go and get those results is tough. And so luckily the cancer had not spread in my case, and it was local to my prostate. And then they put me on this new drug called Zytiga. I don't know what your course of therapy was, but they put me on this drug called Zytiga, which is a form of a chemotherapy. And then they tracked my progress, and my tumor shrunk by 80%. And then 6 months later, they did my operation. They did a radical prostatectomy on mine and pulled my prostate out. February 5th, now this is 2013 was my operation, and I've been clear ever since. But they give you hormones, and you lose all your testosterone, and you become a menopausal female for a few months, right, Tom? Did you go through this?
I didn't go through that. Mine was a little bit different. Mine was localized to my prostate as well. They went a different route with me in terms of it was radiation, only radiation.
I had radiation.
And I had 33 treatments, and it started in March, and it ended, I rang the bell on June 12th of 2020.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that biopsy still haunts me from time to time. I mean, it was an awful experience, and they don't tell you. They just say that they're going to do a biopsy. They don't tell you what that actually consists of.
Exactly. I think on purpose.
Yeah.
So you don't get scared off.
Yeah. And so, it was, you do those things in your mind about why you, and all of those questions you ask yourself. Yeah. And, but one of the things that I think that people who are survivors don't talk about enough, that I think is important, is that when you have prostate cancer, it does not just affect you, it affects your family.
Yeah.
And everyone is impacted by you being, having cancer.
Sure.
And so, I encourage those. There are some other survivors in our community, and I just encourage you to share it with people and let them know that it is important to talk about it and share. And I share it a lot with houses of worship that I'm working with. But I'm
happy to talk to people about it and talk to other family members about it. But you reminded me of something, Tone, because you said something that rung a bell with me. Is when you're in the middle of treatment, you are having those thoughts. Why is me? Am I going to die? Those kinds of things. And at 3 a.m, you wake up and you can't go back to bed. You know what I did, Tone? I watched every hour comedy special at 3 a.m. until I could fall back asleep again. I watched every comedy show on Netflix, and that's what got me through the nights.
And John, I will share this, and we're going to move on. One of the things that it has done for me is it has pushed me to not take time for granted. It has pushed me to be as aggressive, and I mean the word aggressive, about learning as much as I can about what I'm doing in terms of video production. I'm in a small pool, working with a small church that's trying to figure out how they can continue to interact with one another. But I don't know how much time I have left, but I know that it's important for me to be assertive and aggressive about learning as much as I can, sharing it as much as possible, and also encourage people, stop thinking that you have, if the pandemic hasn't done anything, it lets us all know that we don't have as much time as we think we do, and we need to be assertive about doing the things that are important. Stop putting off. Do what you got to do. Take care of business. The next question is, when mentoring youth, how have they mentored you?
So this is interesting. I reflect back of when I was raising my son and the neighborhood kids, and each one of these guys was different, and they would come to me with challenges, and it was interesting to see how all these kids approached life and growing up with broken homes, etc. And it taught me to be patient and not laugh. When I was a young guy, when my son was born in my 20s, he would do something that was trivial and I would giggle, and that used to make him cry. And so
wow.
I learned not to laugh at people or the young guys and be more patient with them and listen to what their challenges and just kind of give them an attaboy and mostly listen to what they're saying and not be so reactive and not blow them off in that regard. So they did teach me a lot. That's a good question. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Josh is asking these great questions from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much, Josh. Guy Cochran from Seattle is back. He says, how do you think the big Vegas trade shows, CES, NAB, etc., will change post-pandemic?
This is what we talk about on office hours almost every show. I think trade shows are done. It's going to take a long time for them to die, but I tell people the writing on the wall, the canary in the coal mine was Comdex. Comdex was the largest convention in Las Vegas by far. It was double the size of CES, and it's gone. It died because the audience, which are guys like us, used to go to the trade show mostly to find out information about the products or what was coming and find vendors. All that stuff we find out online now. And so,
absolutely.
So the convention is gone. That same thing's going to happen to these other conventions. The paradigm for us having to travel somewhere to go, find or meet people or find out information about the latest product, that is over. And so it's going to take a long time because there's so much infrastructure, so many careers, but it's going to die eventually. I think it's going to die a slow death, but I think that they're eventually going to die.
Thanks, Guy, for that question. Roy Myers from Bel Air, Maryland. How do you maintain focus and productivity on your projects while also participating in office hours and after hours? That is, how do you achieve balance among these competing interests?
This is another great question. Great questions from your audience, Tom. So I, right out of college, having my degree in engineering and business, and knowing I was going to be entrepreneurial, got involved with Amway in my 20s. And Amway was the best business/entrepreneurial teacher on the planet. The lessons that I learned from their ecosystem is phenomenal. And they teach you to create multiple forms of revenue. And so trading time for dollars is not a good equation. I learned that from Amway. So any job that you're in that requires your personal effort is not a good way to create wealth. And so you need to create a source of income outside of your own effort. And you need to find a job, and Warren Buffett will say this, you need to find something that makes money while you're sleeping. And so I have structured my life in such a manner that I have multiple irons in the fire. And a lot of those things generate revenue without my time and effort. It gives me the ability to spend every morning. So office hours for me is a routine. My wife and I go to bed early. And so I'm up at usually 5 in between 5 and 6. I come downstairs, set up my studio, and then I'm on until 9. And then sometimes I'll pop into after hours. I used to spend a lot more time there in the past. But right now, because of the production on the rocket, we are spending a lot of time in our own room discussing production. So we're spending a lot of time in there. But yes, Roy, creating multiple sources of income, I think, is the way to prosper in today's society. The problem is finding something that keeps your interest and your passion about to create those revenue streams.
And you've also shared that you guys, some of you are actually in business together. Some of the office hour members are in business together, and you guys are doing some great things.
100%. So after I saw what a poor job people were doing on these virtual events, I threw my hat in the ring. I said, we can do this, and we could bring talent to the table, singers and entertainers and magicians and all that kind of stuff. And we created a company called Talent Pros Live, and we do virtual production. And we're doing some work for Fortune 500 companies now. All the guys that are on the team are all from office hours, and they all work for themselves out of their house. And we're doing some amazing stuff. And I don't want to do on-site production. I want to do production that I can sit in my house and produce the show with multiple producers. And we use multiple TDs in case one crashes, the other guy takes over. And it's been working out very, very well for us.
Very cool. Thanks, Roy, for the great question. We have Chris Taylor from Carlsbad, California. John, I know rockets are great, but did you get interested in football? Foosball, single or double? So
Tony, a lot of people, when I used to go and do speeches, we didn't even talk about Bitcoin, which was the last 10 years of my life. Was it 10 years? No, it's been about 8 of my life was in the crypto business. But when I go out and do speeches on whether it's technology or crypto, I always have, usually on a slide somewhere or at the end of my presentation, I tell people that I build high-powered rockets and I'm a professional foosball player. And so people come rubbing it up to me. They don't want to know about technology or Bitcoin. They want to know about rockets or foosball. I won the U.S. Open in 1990 in singles, and we got second place in doubles. That in our category, we were able to do very, very well at that event. Several of us still play. In fact, we have a world champion here. His name is Lewis Cartwright. And the guys get together every week. They bug me every week to come play with them. I did there for a while. The problem with foosball is the guys that are all the world champions in that business aren't very well financially off. And so I knew if you wanted to model yourself after somebody that's financially successful, I can't hang out with these guys. And so after winning that event in Colorado, I went and I stopped playing foosball and I went and created a career for myself. And now I can go back and play with good spirits and play the game. I'm a very, very good foosball player. So happy to play at any meetup the guys want to go meet up.
Thanks, Chris, for that great question. Let's talk about your use of social media.
One of my companies I created is called Social SEO Marketing. And we were doing social media marketing. I was building websites. I used to do all of Mike Tyson's online profile. I built his website, and we managed his Twitter, his YouTube, and his Facebook. We did that I'm the one that, before he did anything online, I'm the one that basically edified him and his wife on they're leaving money on the table and they need to get on the bandwagon. And so I kind of started them off in that regard, and then built many, many sites. So Tone, one of my clients right now is the Fifth Dimension, the singing group.
Oh, wow.
So fantastic. I built their website 15 years ago, and they called me up about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, our guy left and we can't find anybody else. Can you do this again? So I'm right now rebuilding their website for them, and the conductor for the Fifth Dimension, who's a personal friend. But I did hundreds and hundreds of websites. I still do stuff for my family. OH-Space, which is our website for our rockets. I built that website. It's all done in WordPress. And then I learned about SEO techniques from a real high-end SEO. But that's the half-life of an SEO expert is about 12 months.
John,
And
can you show the website?
which one? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Our space
Yeah.
website.
It's right here. Yeah. So OH dash space or hyphen, Chris says. And there's a countdown timer, T minus 16 days. And then there's all kinds of information. If I click on rocket, you can barely see me standing next to the rocket. The rocket's 12 feet tall. It's going to weigh in between 80 to 100 pounds. It's got 2 flight computers. It's a very, very large rocket. There's the specs on the motor. The motor is an N-class motor. Remember the lesson from earlier. It burns for 5 seconds. Our projected altitude is just under 15,000 feet. It has 2 flight computers in it with live telemetry built into the rocket. And you can go, and that's how we're going to wrap it. Not for the launch, but after it comes back, we're going to launch it like an American flag.
Oh, wow. That is so cool, John.
And here's the flight computers, Tone. I brought this over to show and tell. Switch back to the right camera. So here are the 2 flight computers. Here's a primary and a backup flight computer, and you can see the antenna. It broadcasts down to the ground, and it allows us to give us the real-time graphics. And then this will blow out the 4 charges of black powder to blow out the drogue at apogee when it gets to the top of its trajectory. And then it comes down to 1,250 feet, and then the main parachute, which is 16 feet diameter, will blow off at 1,250 feet.
Wow. Can you, and forgive the ignorance of this question, can you predict where it will land?
We use a program called RockSim, which is a simulation program for rocketry. The problem is they can't correctly simulate the wind. And so what happens is this thing goes off, it flies up to, say, 14,500 feet. It blows the drogue. The drogue is got a 60-inch diameter to it. And up there, the wind is blowing pretty good. And so this thing can drift for miles away if it's windy. And so it's hard to predict where it's going to land. It's got telemetry built in it, Tom. And so it gives us a beacon. You see, like when you see Jacques Cousteau or stuff, when they tag a shark or whatever, and they've got the little antenna that they're pointing in the water, that's the same technology we use for rockets. So if we lose it, we can point this little thing around, and it will beep for about 10 hours before the batteries deplete. And that gives us the GPS coordinates of the rocket so we can go drive out there and find it.
Okay, very cool. The next question is, what is your opinion of in-person hybrid events, and where are you with digital first events? You kind of already talked about it, but just give it a little bit more sauce to the meat.
So Tony, you I believe are one of the 100 members of Ross Brand's prediction book, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I've been on there, I don't know, 3 or 4 years in a row. My prediction this year is going to talk about hybrid events and how bad they are. And I used to produce them. So all the stuff I did for PGA and Joe Walsh, all those were in venue events. And I was like the tail at the end of the road to broadcast the live stream out. And the audiences weren't gigantic. They were a couple of thousand. We did, Kelsey Grammer was on the Tonight Show and said that he was going to do a reading the next day, which was New Year's Eve, and he read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas from his house using our technology. And I think he had maybe 400 to 600 viewers watch. So a lot of people don't watch live events. 10 to 15x your audience is going to come on demand. And that's why YouTube is so successful, is because people like to consume data on demand, and they don't like to stick to a schedule on live. And so live gigs, I try to talk people out of doing live gigs unless it's fully interactive or a sports event, something like that. But the majority of the audience are going to watch recorded media. And so hybrid events, somebody's getting ignored. Either mostly the online audience is getting ignored, and they'll just drop off. They'll watch for 5 minutes and they'll drop. So I'm all about digital first events. They're going to grow. A lot of the stuff's coming back to in person now, but they got a taste, especially their accountants. After accountants saw the return on investment on a digital first event, you cannot argue with the numbers.
Absolutely, I agree. The next question is, can you summarize your use of different technologies from your office hour experience?
You mean the technologies that I learned about on office hours?
Yes.
So this whole studio was influenced from office hours. This is the Blackmagic ATEM Extreme ISO. In fact, here I can show. So here's my setup here. Let me stand in front of this pink light here. So this is an M1 Mac Mini powering 2 monitors that are in front of me. This monitor up above here is from the multi-view output out of the ATEM Mini. And the one to the left is a Raspberry Pi, which I had Raspberry Pis before we learned about Raspberry Pis. Tony was on that lesson too. And I was so proud of Jonas not to ignore Tony, and all of us got through that lab. It was an amazing, it was one of the most monumental days on office hours, that lab that we learned.
I think that was the time in which I was solely hooked on office hours, because I was definitely bringing up the rear. And there were so many people that were so helpful, so encouraging and uplifting, and
But Tony, we love you. You're part of the family.
Well, it was a fantastic experience, and I still have my Raspberry Pi, and it works great. And it cemented me, amongst other things that have happened in this community. It definitely cemented me in the community.
Yeah, so Josh, a ton of gear. This microphone, I knew about Heil because he had a show on Twit. Bob Heil had the ham radio show on Twit. I watched some of that stuff because one of my check marks on my to-do list, my bucket list, was to get my ham radio license. So I used to watch that show, and Bob Heil used to go on there and talk about microphones a lot. But I didn't buy one. I had a bunch of other microphones, pro microphones. When I first got on office hours, I had a mid-level AKG microphone. Brian has the same one microphone that I had. It's a 3000B. It's a decent microphone, but it doesn't sound as clear as the Heil does. A lot of gear that I learned about from office hours has influenced I learn every day. I learn something about office hours. I have a notes file with everything I learned about office hours in one giant list. And it's extensive. I think that if you've been on office hours for the last 2 years, you basically have a PhD in media production.
I agree with you. I think that's true. Tim, I can't think of his last name right now, but Tim says buying the equipment is Tim McCullough. Tim McCullough said buying the equipment is the way in which you pay tuition to the office hour school. And I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. And John, how many workstations, streaming stations do you have in your home?
Oh, brother, don't tell my wife. This one I call Studio C. This is my big boy. This has got the nice camera on it, the Sony A7 III with the good lens on it. But my main desk that you see me on office hours every day is my main desk. Adjacent to that is a PC. Adjacent to that is a Raspberry Pi. And then right behind me, this big monitor on wheels has a table on it, and I put my laptop there. So I have about 5 or 6 different workstations. My original goal when I built the one on the big stand behind me was I was going to wheel it around my house. I have a lot of really interesting corners and backgrounds in my house. I wanted to come into office hours every day at a different corner. But too lazy to do that. I'm real comfortable at my desk. Rarely do I come here to Studio C anymore. This is Fenwick's desk now. So when he comes to my house, he broadcasts on this machine.
Fantastic. We have another question from Mr. Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Has SpaceX and Blue Origin, etc., started the next chapter in spaceflight? What do you expect to see from them in the future?
So this is an interesting question. So I didn't get back into rocketry until I started to see what SpaceX and Blue Origin were doing. I'm like, rocketry is cool again. And I can't tell you, the hobby is growing specifically because of SpaceX and Blue Origin. It's hip to be in rocketry. When I went out to get my level 1, level 2 last March, UNLV had 20 kids out at the rocket launch. There was a Cub Scout troop out there with 30 kids. We haven't seen that excitement in the hobby for a decade. And so to see these guys, the richest guys on the planet, into rockets is really exciting for me because I've got a 50-year history. I've been flying rockets longer than Elon and Jeff Bezos, probably combined. They just have more money. If I had their kind of money, I wouldn't be going to space, but I have aspirations to fly to space. I've designed a rocket that I think can get to the lower levels of space, which is 350,000 feet. And if we can get a sponsor for that, we'll build that rocket. That's the next chapter after this rocket that we're launching now.
And let's share again the actual date of the launch. That is March 19th.
So it's a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is an event sponsored by Tripoli Vegas, which is our local Las Vegas high-powered rocket club. Twice a year, they have a regional launch, which springtime is called Springfest, and then in October is called Oktoberfest. And they sponsor and own all the equipment, all the launch pads and the PAs and all that system, and they go out and set all that stuff up. I'm a participant in that launch, and we'll be out there as early as Wednesday setting up our camp. We've got 20 people from office hours coming to the lake bed in their campers, setting up. The production is significant. 1F Jeff is the EIC, and he's running things.
And what is the EIC?
Executive in charge.
Okay.
And Fenwick is basically the production manager. So he's directing, TDing, calling the show, making things happen. Sky is our executive producer. Josh is a producer. Noah's a producer. David Brady is flying in from New York. He's going to be on camera. Doug Ferguson is TDing. His wife is on camera. On and on and on and on. I'm sorry if I forgot your name, guys. Widner's coming out. Chris Widner's coming out from Indiana. He's driving out with his trailer. He's helping out tremendously.
Don't forget the space doctor.
Oh, yes. So Vienna is our host. So Vienna Tran from Australia, who just graduated with their medical degree, is our host. And we have another host that's going to be on premise, but she is our host. We're very, very excited for Vienna. And a cast of other crew. We'll have at least 20 office hours people and then supporting staff, family members, friends, et cetera out there. So and you guys will be able to see all this live, and then we're building a documentary behind, because the story isn't about the launch. The story is about our community and office hours and what's bringing all these people together and their excursion on getting here and participating with the office hour community. That is the story, Tone. And so that's much more compelling than me fly a little rocket off. It's the interactions, planning for the show, managing the show, pulling it off, fingers crossed, is a monumental story. I have a soft commitment from the local press to come out and film us filming the live broadcast and talk about the story of office hours. That really is the story. And that's what Sky and Josh and Noah are putting together, is basically a little documentary on the power of the community.
Yeah, I would say, and I might be wrong about this, but I would say this is probably the largest rollout of office hour personnel on any project. And I think the only thing that would come reasonably close, I think, would be a Super Saturday.
Yeah, we're going to have the most office hours community members in one place at a time. And the nice thing about this, it's all focused on the launch, right? So it's one giant production that we're doing, and then a ton of editing with a ton of footage that we have. We've got a ton of B-roll, and whether it's going to be used for education, a documentary about the community, or what several derivations thereof, a ton of content that we're building, and then it's Sky and Chris Fenwick editing all that footage into several different forms of distribution media.
Wow, this is an amazing journey. We have another question from Guy Cochran. How did you get into crypto, and what is the future in this space?
And there was a question about Bitcoin, I think, that I saw go across.
I think it was a question from Josh.
Bo Cordell asked specifically about Bitcoin. Okay, so when our company, the streaming company, got really shut down because of 9/11 and the economy, one of my programmers in 2014 emailed me and he said, "Here, go download this program. It's called Bitcoin, and run this thing. It's like SETI. If any of you guys know what SETI is, which is the search for extraterrestrials, that screensaver that used to run on your machine, and it was the largest at that point. SETI was the largest distributed computing application in the world. I'm sure Bitcoin is now. Bitcoin was a distributed computing platform that also had a cryptocurrency on top of it. And I had no idea what crypto was. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was mining. And so you download this application on your machine and you become part of the Bitcoin verification mining network. You're running this app in the background, and I let it run for about a month. I never got any Bitcoin. But that was my first introduction to Bitcoin. That was 2014. And then 2016, it was earlier than that, because Bitcoin is now like 12 years old. So I think it was earlier. And then 2014, one of my ex-partners and I got together and we created our own coin. And so we had our own coin that we developed back in the day. And then we developed that coin, and then we used to go around the world doing seminars on teaching people about the blockchain and crypto. And I did that from 2016 until about the middle of 2019, traveling around. And I traveled around the world 3 times, got a ton of air miles, and trained a lot of people on blockchain and Bitcoin, and still involved in that industry. But my kids now are way more active than I am in it, because you have to stay on it and see the news and see what's going on. The technical developments are so fast in the crypto space. But I'm a huge believer in crypto. There were some major breakthroughs in crypto that were overcome. The double spend problem was a big problem, and verifying transaction was a huge problem that was solved with this blockchain. And so that's a 3-hour conversation. So a lot of times when I meet people, I have them download a crypto wallet on their phone, and I send them a little bit of crypto on their phone. And then so they get a little introduction of how crypto works, about downloading and holding a little Bitcoin in their wallet so that they can understand the process. And then there's an ATM right across the street from this little pub that I hang out at, and you can walk over there and send a little Bitcoin to them and get cash out of the machine. So that's a big eye opener for a lot of people on the value. But the blockchain technology is significant discovery / invention about distributed database. So distributed computing is a huge win. There's no centralization in there are some cryptos that do have centralization models, but Bitcoin is completely decentralized. Nobody controls it. There's no Bitcoin CEO. There's no Bitcoin company. There's no technical support. It's a network of individuals running the Bitcoin software on computers or a farm of computers that make those transactions go worldwide. And it's not anonymous. A lot of people think it's anonymous, and it's not. You have a wallet address. You have a wallet address, and that wallet address can be tracked. And so when you download the Bitcoin client on your machine, it downloads the entire blockchain. And somebody has to look it up for me. I think it's currently probably close to 600 gigabytes right now, the actual blockchain. So every transaction that's ever happened is downloaded to your local machine, and every transaction, if you start verifying transactions, that database continues to grow. And that's how the blockchain works. So that's
amazing.
That's a 3-hour conversation.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like either another conversation with Tony Mobley or possibly a second hour on office hours, but there is going to be a need for more conversation about that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also that we had a question from Bo Cordell around Bitcoin as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bo, for your question. Douglas Carmichael is in with a question. Could you see office hours space being an educational enabler for K through 12 students?
100%. I learned when I was 5. And so I think, all these little boys, we always have boys in our family. In the Pretto families, mostly all boys. And so I hung out with a lot of smelly boys as a kid growing up. And we all got excited about rockets. And then learning about how they work, generally back then is by trial and error. You build a rocket and fly it. Does it fly or not? But then as you get older, you learn about the science involved in rocketry. And so you learn the equations, you learn the relationship between the center of gravity of a rocket and the center of pressure of a rocket, and will it fly? And you learn those things, and it's valuable information. I think it's hugely valuable for K through 12 as part of a STEM education. I'm a big science and math guy, so I think OH Space is happy to be an enabler for K through 12. We've got tons of content, and we have tons of people willing to communicate to that community.
And I think you have a PhD as the person who is leading the education effort. Yeah.
So John Idelson, who's he told me, I incorrectly introduced him the other day, I think he told me to say, a seasoned PhD, retired now, from Monterey, and he is our director of education. And so he's reached out. He got us a sponsor for the rocket. We have 6 sponsors for the rocket, and he got us one of the sponsors. But he's also talked to people at NASA and several other educational institutions about possible education content that we could create or communicate to those groups of people. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are one of them. We've had conversations with them, and they are interested about engaging.
And I also believe that the actual launch is sort of around the office hours, education hour as well.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going back, 6 questions ago. You asked me specifically about the timing, and I went off on a tirade about Tripoli Vegas. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the launch is scheduled at 9 p.m. Pacific. That's a Saturday, and that's right during educational hour. And so I'm not sure how Alex wants to insert our stream into educational hour yet, and how that's going to work. But the stream's going to start at 8 Pacific, and we've got tons of B-roll and interesting information leading up to the launch. And if all goes well, which is weather and FAA, we have to get clearance from the tower at McCarran in order to get our launch window to 15,000 feet. So we're at their behest of telling us that we get a launch window of usually 15 to 20 minutes that we can launch. And then we have to pray to the wind gods to make sure that the wind is not over 20 miles an hour. So that Saturday, the 19th March, starting at 8 a.m. And then Alex has to tell us how he wants to insert us into the program.
Fantastic. The next question is, did you know the rocket project was going to be this big?
No, so that's a great question. I'm getting texts from people. It said 9 p.m. It's 9 a.m. 9 a.m. March 19th, 9 a.m. The stream is going to start at 8 a.m. oh-space.com. The live stream will be broadcasted right on that front page. We're using YouTube for the broadcast. So 9 a.m. Pacific time is our projected launch. Tony, I built this rocket to regain my level 3 certification. There's only about 1,200 people that are certified from Tripoli in the world. Level 3 is like a black belt in rocketry for amateur rocketry, high power. Anything over an F motor is considered high-powered rockets. It differentiates us from the Estes class rockets. And I had this. We flew a rocket in October, which was my flight partner's level 3. We decided to focus on one rocket at a time and not do them simultaneously. So we flew his rocket successfully in October, and then we focused on mine. And then the guys were all here for NAB. That never happened in October. So They were here for the beginning of October, and then they saw us building the rockets because it was two weeks ahead of the launch. And then I said, yeah, see that one back there? That's next. We're going to fly that in March. And then the guys, Fenwick and mostly Keenan, they're the instigators that said, let's do this as a live stream with office hours. And I said, fabulous. And it has grown and grown and grown every week.
Wow.
Something else comes to the table, offers sponsorship money. We're getting team shirts, which is sponsored from Nigel's company, Bravas, has outfitted the entire flight crew with nice polo shirts. And others, and 6 sponsors, and on and on and on and on. It's turning into this huge, huge event.
What are you most concerned about for the future?
Especially here in Las Vegas is clean water. So our lake is 130 feet down from normal, and water is a big concern for us in Southern Nevada. And worldwide, clean water. Alex has actually talked about this. Having clean water, the earth is covered with water, but I think that desalination and very safe and reliable a fusion reactor, I hope that's in the next 100 years, but fission reactors that have pretty much endless power can provide us some amazing water for the future. But water is a concern of the future. And humanity. Can humanity get along? In this tumultuous time, as of right now, can the world all get along? I am a technologist engineer. I always think that technology is going to fix the problem, but humanity is a different animal, and dealing with that on a worldwide basis is an interesting challenge. I think education is the key to peace. I think the more people become educated, the more peaceful society becomes.
What's next for John Pretto?
Trying to get through this launch. I'm going to do some additional work for Christian.com the remainder of the year. Building the Fifth Dimension website, getting re-engaged with them. I'll be managing their YouTube and their Twitter and all that stuff. So that will be fun for me. That's fun to hang out with all those guys. I don't know, 11-time Grammy Award winning band that only guys that are Tony and I's age know about. Hanging out with the guys, designing this rocket that actually would go to space and try to get that funded from some big sponsors would be a fun project. So several things. I always got 4 or 5 things simultaneously in the works.
John, thank you so much for being with me tonight. This has been a great conversation, as I knew it would be, and we could go on and on and on. But because our team that provides Conversation with Tony Mobley is a global team that helps me. We have to be sensitive to the time zones around the world. And so we unfortunately have to end. And so I'm going to do my thanks right now. So I want to thank Kimberly Mobley, Ron Mobley, Global Family and Friends, Alex Lindsay, Office Hour members, DVE Store, Liminal Entertainment Technologies, Byte High, Video 360, ApprovalLoan.com, Cloud Bedrock LLC, Ken Jordan, Jonas Tatel, Aaron Huslich, Jarek Cheetah, David Brady, Marcus Lee Folk, Richard Lavery, Chris Fenwick, Manolo Lozano, Jeffrey Powers, Bo Cordell, Mickey McAture, Hasmuk Geijar, Doug Moeller, Laura Thompson, Bryant Shan, Dennis Champion Walker, Roscoe Jones, George Butters, Joshua Minden, and Conversation with Tony Mobley producer, Claloc Miguel Lopez Waterman. Thank you all so much for your contribution to Conversation with Tony Mobley. Mr. John Pretto, a video production professional, business owner, and the Rocket Man, thank you for your great work. Next week, we are going to have Dr. Hasmuk Geijar, medical doctor, business owner, and video production professional, coming to us on Conversation with Tony Mobley from Cape Town, South Africa. And I'm going to also say that he is a freedom fighter. He'll be on next week. Hope you can come and join me for this great conversation with Dr. Geijar. Thanks to you all so much, and good night. Take care. Thank you for coming to Conversations with Tony Mobley. Thanks again, John.
Good to see you, Tony. Thank you very much. See everybody.
Good night. Take care. See you next week.